She kissed me goodbye like any other morning. By lunchtime, our joint account was empty, and so was the life I thought we built together. I didn't scream, I didn't beg. I froze her credit and took back the car, and that was just the beginning. My name is Garrett Miles, and I run a small but growing landscaping business in North Carolina. I've always liked working with my hands, shaping chaos into order. There's something peaceful about clean edges and freshly cut lines, like life makes sense for a moment. That's what I thought I had with Lena: clean lines, shared ground. A life we were building together. We lived in a cozy 3-bedroom house just outside Raleigh. The mortgage was in both our names, so was the car, the bank account, the bills. We'd been together 4 years, long enough for everything to feel fused together. I honestly thought we were heading toward marriage. I wasn't in a rush, but I'd been looking at rings. Lena worked part-time at a photography studio and freelanced on weekends. She had a quiet kind of confidence, calm, steady, never one to raise her voice. We had our ups and downs like anyone, but nothing I thought was serious. We split chores, took weekend trips, cooked dinner together even if it was just frozen pizza. Looking back, I can't believe how blind I was. About a month before everything fell apart, I noticed Lena spending more time out. Client meetings, she'd say, or catching up with a friend. I didn't question it. I trusted her. We had nothing to hide, or so I believed. I remember one night she came home late, hair damp from a shower, but her makeup still perfect. I asked how the shoot went. She smiled, kissed my cheek, and said, "Exhausting." Then she poured herself a glass of wine and went straight to bed. It was a little off, sure, but we all get tired. I let it go. That was my mistake, brushing off small things because I didn't want to seem paranoid. Or maybe because I was scared of what I might find if I started digging. You tell yourself love means trust, but sometimes trust is just another word for not wanting to see the truth. And the truth was coming. I didn't know it yet, but in a few days my entire life would change. Not with a crash, not with a fight. Just with a number on a screen. $0. Where all our money used to be. It was a Tuesday. I remember because I had a meeting with a new commercial client, a big apartment complex that wanted regular landscaping. I was feeling good. Business was growing. I had a packed schedule, a full team, and a steady relationship. Around noon, I stopped at a gas station to grab a sandwich and fill up the truck. When I slid my card in, it beeped and spit out a decline message. I frowned, tried again. Same thing. I figured maybe the pump was acting up, so I went inside and tried to pay at the counter. Declined again. My first instinct was to call the bank. Maybe there was a system error. Maybe it was fraud. I didn't panic, not yet. I walked back to the truck, opened the banking app on my phone, and waited for it to load. And then I saw it. Checking $0. Savings $1.03. I blinked, thinking it was a glitch, but the numbers didn't change. I scrolled down and saw a string of recent withdrawals, all within the past 48 hours. Some were large transfers, others were smaller ATM pulls, different towns, different days. But all led back to one person. Lena. I stared at the screen, my pulse pounding in my neck. At first I thought maybe there was a mix-up. Maybe she moved money to pay for something urgent, a family emergency or something I hadn't heard about. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I called her straight to voicemail. I texted, "Hey, something weird with the account. Can you call me?" No response. I called again 10 minutes later, then again an hour after that. I left 3 voicemails, each one more strained than the last. By sunset, I'd stopped trying. Something deep inside me had already shifted. The trust I once felt had started to rot. That night, I sat on the edge of our bed in the dark, scrolling through every transaction, every withdrawal. I felt like a fool. How could I not see this coming? How long had she been planning it? I didn't cry, I didn't yell. I just sat there, stunned, watching the shape of my life collapse with a few swipes of a finger. I didn't know where she was. But I knew one thing for sure. She took everything. The next morning, I woke up in the same clothes I'd worn the day before. I hadn't really slept, just drifted in and out, staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying every moment of the past few weeks. I kept asking myself the same question. Why? I couldn't accept that someone I shared a bed with would just vanish, taking every dollar we'd saved. It had to be a misunderstanding, right? But the more I dug, the less innocent it all looked. I logged back into our joint account and pulled the full statement. The withdrawals weren't random. They started small, $200 here, $150 there, spread out over weeks. Then came two large transfers to an unfamiliar account, followed by a series of ATM cash pulls. One from the gas station by her sister's place. Another from a spot near downtown where she said she had a weekend shoot. The final one was just a day before everything went to zero. I called her again, straight to voicemail. I sent a text. "Just talk to me. I deserve that much." "Nothing." Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I looked through her laptop. It was still in our home office, password saved under my name. I told myself I had a right to know. Inside, I found a spreadsheet. A budget, but not for us, for her. Monthly expenses, new rent estimates, moving costs, notes like car, and separate accounts scribbled in the margins. One tab was labeled Exit Plan. That's when I knew. This wasn't impulsive. This wasn't a moment of panic or some desperate act. Lena had been preparing to leave quietly, efficiently, for months. I felt sick. My hands were shaking, not from anger, but from a deep kind of sadness I hadn't felt before. The kind that comes when someone rewrites your entire story without telling you. It wasn't just the money. It was the betrayal of trust, the months of pretending. The mornings she smiled at me while secretly packing her escape. For a while, I just sat there staring at the screen. I could have screamed. I could have thrown the laptop across the room, but I didn't. I was done reacting. Instead, I took a breath and stood up. If she wanted a clean break, she should have played fair. Now it was my turn to plan. For the first time in days, I felt something sharper than shock: focus. She thought she'd left me with nothing, but she underestimated me. She thought I'd sit there, stunned and helpless. Maybe she even counted on it, but I didn't get where I am by rolling over when things go wrong. I'm a business owner. I deal with setbacks every season. Trucks break down, clients bail, weather ruins weeks of work. You learn to pivot. You don't cry in the dirt. You adjust your grip and keep digging. So that's what I did. I started with the credit report. I used one of those free services and pulled every detail I could. Lena and I weren't married, something I suddenly felt grateful for, but because we'd applied for credit cards and loans together, I had access to some shared data. And to my surprise, she hadn't just taken money. She'd opened a few new lines of credit using our joint address. That's when I realized she wasn't just trying to vanish. She was trying to rebuild a new life on my name. I made a call to a credit agency, explained the situation, and requested a fraud alert and credit freeze. I felt weird doing it, almost like I was betraying her, but then I remembered she already betrayed me, and she didn't blink. Next, I called our insurance company and removed her from the car policy. The car was under my name, both the title and the financing. She drove it more, sure, but legally it was mine. I stared at the keys hanging on the hook near the door. I hadn't touched them since she left. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. If she was okay stealing from me, she didn't deserve to drive around in my car like she owned the world. It wasn't about revenge. It was about drawing a line. I wasn't going to chase her. I wasn't going to beg for explanations. But I sure as hell wasn't going to let her erase me from my own life. I took down the keys and slipped them in my pocket. I had a plan now. And step one was getting back what was mine. I didn't even know where she was staying. She hadn't officially changed her address, but I had a guess. A couple months back, Lena mentioned helping a friend, Cassie, move into a new apartment across town. It stuck with me because Lena had been vague about it. Now that vagueness felt like a breadcrumb. I checked the Find My app on my phone. We'd never disabled location sharing. I doubt she even remembered it was on. I opened it with shaky hands and waited. There it was. A tiny dot blinking in a neighborhood near Wake Forest. Not far. The dot wasn't moving. The car was parked. I didn't wait. I grabbed my jacket keys and a spare license plate I'd pulled from our storage box. I wasn't sure what I'd find, but I was done hesitating. My heart thudded the whole drive, palms slick against the steering wheel. It wasn't fear. It was adrenaline. I felt like I was stepping into a version of myself I hadn't known existed, someone tired of being stepped on. When I turned onto the street, I saw it immediately. My car, our black Civic, parked halfway into a gravel driveway. Same dent in the bumper. Same tree-shaped air freshener hanging from the mirror. I parked a block away, took a breath, and walked over. My hands didn't shake this time. I had the spare key in my pocket. I clicked it. The lights blinked once, sharp and familiar. I opened the door, slid in, and started the engine. No alarm, no sign of Lena, no confrontation. Part of me expected her to burst through the door, yelling, crying, demanding, but nothing happened. The apartment windows stayed still. The street was silent. I backed out of the driveway and drove off without looking back. When I pulled into my own driveway 20 minutes later, I sat there with the engine running, both hands on the wheel. I didn't smile. I didn't cheer. I just let the relief settle over me like a quiet wave. It wasn't about the car. It was about taking something back, about not letting her rewrite the ending without my say. And deep down, I knew something else. She wasn't going to stay quiet for long. It happened 2 days later, Saturday morning. I was sipping cheap coffee from a paper mug and trying to sort out invoices for the week when I heard a knock. Not the mail, not a delivery. It was that sharp, impatient knock people use when they're angry but pretending they're not. I knew it before I even opened the door. Lena. She stood there in a hoodie, hair tied up like she hadn't slept, arms crossed tight against her chest. Her expression was blank, but her eyes were lit with something bitter. "Really, Garrett?" she said. No hello, no apology, just a loaded tone like I had betrayed her. I didn't invite her in. I leaned against the doorway and waited. "You froze my credit," she snapped. "You took the car." I nodded. "You emptied our account." Her jaw tightened, but she didn't deny it. "I needed that money. I had to get out. You wouldn't have understood." That hit harder than I expected, like we'd been strangers all along. "I wouldn't have understood what?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "That you planned your escape behind my back, that you left me with nothing and didn't even leave a note." She looked away then, her arms loosening slightly. "I was suffocating, Garrett. You didn't see it, but I was. Every day I felt like I was disappearing." "And your solution was to steal from me?" I asked. "It wasn't stealing. It was mine too." "No," I said firmly. "It was ours, and you didn't ask, you didn't talk, you just took." She stepped back a little, shaking her head like I'd somehow missed the point. "I didn't come here to fight. I need the car." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I couldn't believe she was serious. "No, Lena, that part's over. You want a clean break. Then you get one, but not with what's mine." We stood in silence for a beat. Her face crumpled just slightly, like she might cry, but she didn't let it happen. Finally, she said, "You've changed." And I replied, "Yeah, you made sure of that." She turned and walked away slowly, like she was waiting for me to stop her. I didn't. I closed the door behind her, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. After she walked away, I stood there in the hallway for a long time. The silence felt different, heavier but clean, like a storm had passed and all that was left was the mess it dragged through. No more guessing, no more pretending. It was time to rebuild. I started with the bank. I opened a new account under just my name. I updated every payment, utilities, truck lease, phone bill, anything that had our joint name on it. I even got a new debit card and cut the old one in half with kitchen scissors. That little snap of plastic felt oddly satisfying. Next, I called my accountant. I explained what had happened down to the last penny. He wasn't shocked, said he'd seen breakups like this more than once. He helped me list out everything that could have been impacted: taxes, business records, anything Lena might have had access to. I changed every password: phone, email, bank, even the thermostat app. Then came the harder part, cleaning out the house. Her clothes were still in the closet, her boots by the door, makeup in the bathroom drawer. It all smelled like her: vanilla lotion and mint shampoo, and each item was like a small jab to the ribs. I filled boxes slowly, one drawer at a time. I didn't rush it. Some things I couldn't pack without stopping. A sweater I'd bought her on our second trip to Asheville, a photo strip from a beach boardwalk where we'd laughed like kids. I almost trashed it all, but I didn't. I taped the boxes shut and stacked them in the garage. Maybe one day she'd come for them, maybe not. With the clutter gone, the house felt bigger. Emptier, yes, but also lighter. I cleaned the floors, opened the windows, let fresh air in. I even painted the bedroom a soft gray, something I'd always wanted but Lena said felt too cold. It didn't feel cold to me, it felt like mine. Bit by bit, I was building a new version of my life, not out of anger, not to prove anything to her, but because I needed to remember who I was before she took so much from me. And strangely, I started to feel stronger. It wasn't just the house that changed, it was me. Slowly, without realizing it at first, I started moving differently, thinking clearer, breathing easier. I stopped walking around like something was about to fall apart, and people noticed. My crew at work was the first to say something. One morning, I was out on a job site helping dig up a stubborn old tree root. Dust flying everywhere, sweat running down my neck. I cracked a joke, something dumb about charging the tree rent, and my guys actually laughed. Real laughter, not just polite nods. Afterward, Lewis, my foreman, clapped me on the shoulder and said, "Man, you're starting to feel like the old Garrett again." That hit me harder than I expected, because he was right. For a while there, I hadn't been myself. I'd been dragging through the days, tired all the time, snapping at things that didn't matter. I didn't realize how much Lena's slow withdrawal, emotional, financial, everything, had chipped away at me. Even my mom noticed. I'd stopped by her place to help fix a leaking kitchen faucet. Afterward, we sat on her porch, sipping lemonade like we used to. She looked over and said, "You seem lighter." "Lighter?" I asked, half smiling. "Yeah," she said, "like something heavy got lifted off your chest." I didn't explain it all to her, just told her things were changing and I was figuring it out. She didn't pry, she just nodded and patted my hand. But the biggest shift came one night at the grocery store. I was standing in line grabbing stuff for dinner when a woman in front of me dropped a jar of tomato sauce. It shattered everywhere. People backed up. She looked embarrassed. Without thinking, I knelt down and started helping her clean it up. She smiled, said thanks, and we laughed about how tomato blood looked like a crime scene. After she left, the cashier looked at me and said, "That was kind. Most people would have just stepped over it." I realized in that moment I hadn't lost who I was. I just buried it under someone else's needs for too long. And now, bit by bit, that person was coming back. Not angry, not broken, just clearer. It came out of nowhere, like most things with Lena. A few weeks had passed since she showed up at my door. Life had quieted down. I was sleeping better. I'd even started looking forward to mornings again, making real breakfast, playing music while I showered, things I hadn't done in ages. Then I saw her name flash on my phone. One message. No typing dots, no follow-up, just this. "I hope one day you understand why I had to leave. I'm sorry for how I did it. You didn't deserve that. Take care of yourself, Garrett." I stared at it for a long time, letting the words soak in. I read it over and over, trying to decide what I felt. Anger, closure, something in between. A part of me wanted to fire back, tell her everything she put me through, how she made me doubt myself, how she shattered the trust we spent years building. I wanted her to feel even half of what I'd felt. But I didn't. I just exhaled, for a long time, like I'd been holding my breath for months and didn't realize it. Her message didn't fix anything. It didn't undo the money she took or the lies or the way she vanished without a word. But it gave me something I hadn't expected, the final word. I didn't reply, not because I was bitter, but because I finally understood something that used to confuse me. Not every ending needs a conversation. Some people walk out of your life not to hurt you, but because they don't know how to stay. And when they go, they leave behind a silence that you have to learn to live inside of and grow from. So I deleted the message, not out of spite but out of peace. Then I put the phone down, stepped outside, and sat on the front steps of the house I had reclaimed, not just physically but emotionally. My home, my space. The sky was turning gold, that soft kind of light right before sunset. I watched a few neighborhood kids ride by on bikes, their laughter trailing behind them like echoes of a simpler time. I smiled, not because everything was okay, but because I was. If you told me 6 months ago this would be my life, alone, starting over, staring down the ruins of something I once thought was forever, I would have laughed, or maybe panicked. But here I am, still standing. Not the same man Lena walked out on. Not the guy who sat on the living room floor, stunned and broken, staring at an empty bank account. That version of me was soft in the wrong places. He thought love meant sacrificing yourself to keep someone else comfortable, even when they stopped showing up for you. Now I know better. I've rebuilt slowly and honestly. The business is steady again. I've taken on more jobs, even hired a part-time assistant to help with the paperwork, something I used to let Lena handle, which I now realize was never really help at all. The house looks different too, not just because of the fresh paint or the new shelves I built in the den, but because it feels lived in. By me. It reflects who I am now, calm, grounded, real. I still think about her sometimes. Not with bitterness, but with clarity. She wasn't all bad. There were good moments, real laughter, real love, at least for a while. But love that demands you shrink yourself isn't love. It's control dressed up in affection. I've been going to the gym more, cooking my own meals, even tried a salsa class last week, me, dancing. I laughed so hard at myself I nearly tripped over my own feet. But it felt good to try something new just for me. And maybe that's the biggest difference now. Before I was building a life for us. Now I'm building a life for me one choice at a time, with both hands, with a clear head, with no need to look over my shoulder. I'm not who I was when she left. I'm not softer, I'm not colder. I'm just better. And if I ever fall in love again, which I'm open to when the time's right, it'll be with someone who meets me where I am. Someone who chooses partnership, not power plays. Someone who adds to the life I've already built. Because I'm no longer starting from scratch. I've already built something solid. Me.